We're back, Alphas.
We're coming in hot with inspiring guests, witty banter, and colorful commentary for today's veterans and military community. This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
Welcome, Alphas. Thanks for joining us. Today, we'll be joined by Army veteran Dr. Timothy Vermillion, who is a licensed clinical social worker, who happens to be an Iraq War veteran and behavioral health officer who served for 25 years. And he is the founder of the Paradise Institute, a veteran-owned practice dedicated to EMDR therapy, advanced trauma treatment, and clinician training. So we're in for a good chat today. Joe, quick question. Did you know that some old school methods for treating, well, I guess they called it shell shock. It wasn't PTSD back in the day, but modern day PTSD included electroshock therapy, which doesn't seem there's anything therapeutic about it. But anyway, electroshock therapy, hydrotherapy, hypnosis, and forced activity. Can you imagine what?
You know, it's funny though, because now outside of electroshock therapy, I've heard for different types of people and different types of trauma, different things work that wouldn't work on others. I mean, hypnosis is famously hit or miss. Hydrotherapy is interesting, and up until recently, I knew very little about that. What is forced activity?
It says it sounds.
Okay, so it's like putting spiders on an arachnophobic.
I think
that?
so.
Yeah.
I think so. Just overactivity. I think they wanted to distract the mind.
Oh, okay, or just forced exercise and things like that. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. The only one of those that seems remotely therapeutic is the hydrotherapy, because hydrotherapy included immersion baths, like cold water baths to slow the blood flow, and to decrease mental activity, which is an interesting concept. Of course, this is well before they had any sort of like scientific evidence showing that worked.
Yeah, we're just seeing what sticks to the
They were
wall.
like, stick them in cold water. Let's see what happens. And then they had they would cover patients with wet sheets, with the idea. This was for extended periods of time with the idea that it would stimulate or soothe the patient, whether they used hot wet sheets or cold wet sheets. Mm-hmm. Nobody likes a cold wet blanket. I'm just saying.
That's why pee is hot.
What? No,
I know that's not the same thing. I just wanted to say something
crude. Speaking of pee, shower treatments were also a therapeutic.
We still use that. Don't act like you don't sometimes sit in the shower and you go, what even was today? Like, what was this?
It's not a hot shower. It's a cold shower.
Yeah, it's just the water itself. I'm just surprised they didn't mix electroshock and hydrotherapy together. I feel like they would have been super effective.
I think those two don't mix.
What do I know? I'm just a guy.
I think this is around the time people were using lobotomies as well, but I don't think they were using them on veterans. But anyway, it's interesting to see how far mental health has come for the veteran community, including the EMDR, which, listen, I am pretty open about my PTSD diagnosis. And I've been through a number of different modality treatments, from general talk therapy, group therapy, one-on-one. Oh my gosh, the worst was prolonged exposure therapy, which I will never recommend to anybody. And I've done EMDR. And what I found is I generally like talk therapy with my favorite counselor and my horses and my service dog.
I'll say, though, that you are more introspective and you will self-correct. And that type of therapy shines with someone like you who is introspective and is always seeking to improve themselves. And I know someone that immersive therapy sounds crazy. It's the only thing that snapped them out of what they were going through. So, again, I guess you never know. I feel like that one is probably the biggest, outside of maybe diving into hardcore psychedelics from being straight edge your whole life. I feel like that's the biggest sort of toss up as to, what you're going to get. I don't know. I hate that was a bad thing for you, but, I don't know. I've been very blessed, I think, to have had the time that I had in the hospital to really cope through, surrounded by people who understood what I was going through. It gave me a good process time that I think I needed. So,
well, it'll be interesting to throw some of these questions out at our guest today.
I think so too. Alphas, please stick around. We'll be back with Dr. Vermillion right after the break. Hey there, Legionnaires and sports fans. This is Joe Worley, American Legion member and Navy veteran, and I am so excited that the American Legion is continuing their tradition of support for the Army-Navy game presented by USAA, the first veteran service organization to sponsor America's game in its 126-year history. That's right. The greatest rivalry in sports just got even more meaningful for veterans like us. We're honored to stand behind the incredible student athletes that are not only competing on the field, but are also committed to protecting the freedoms we hold dear. And through this sponsorship, we're shining a spotlight on our primary mission, Be the One, our fight to end veteran suicide. So mark your calendars, tune in to CBS on December 13th at 3 p.m. Eastern to watch Navy take on Army in this epic showdown. To learn more about the American Legion's involvement and our mission, visit legion.org/Army-Navy game. Let's cheer on our team, support our mission, and show the world what it means to be a Legionnaire. Go Navy! Today we are joined by Dr. Timothy Vermillion, who is a clinical social worker specializing in trauma and providing readjustment therapy for military and veteran populations. Don't worry, we've got loads of trauma to talk about, so we're going to have a fantastic talk. But he's a service-disabled veteran who served in Iraq with the Army National Guard. Dr. Vermillion, welcome to the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Glad to help out in any way I can to get the word out in regards to what benefits are available and what treatments are available for trauma and PTSD.
Well, we're using you in lieu of therapy, so no pressure.
Yeah. Okay.
Not to put you on the hot seat or anything. Can I call you Doc for short?
Doc V is a common.
Doc V. All right, we'll do it. Okay, so first of all, welcome to the show and thank you for your service. I typically like to kick off my questioning with a little bit of background, but I thought I'd have some fun using your veteran positive event timeline to jumpstart our chat. Is that okay?
Sure. Shoot.
All right. So, for many joining the military, it was the first time they ever left home. Was this true for you?
Yes. In that extent, it was the first time that I left home for any length of time. And I was 17. So I went in young, had to get my parents' permission, right? And so, yeah, I went at 17 down to Fort Leonard Wood, and it was a very interesting experience for me.
That's
kind of an awkward kid at the time. So,
were your parents in the service?
Both my parents were in the Coast Guard. That's where they met. My mother left the Coast Guard shortly after my older brother was born, and my father stayed in for many years later.
Wow. Okay. And where did you enlist from at 17?
I enlisted from, it was National Guard. So I enlisted from Seagirt, New Jersey, went to Fort Hamilton, MEPS, and that's where I enlisted from.
Cool. So another one of these veteran positive event timeline questions was a follow-on to that. And that was, what qualities do you think you demonstrated in being able to leave home and take on military training?
Well, there's always reasons why people join the military, some for school, some for esprit de corps. I was joining in 98. In 98, we didn't really have too much going on, right? It was after the Gulf War and before the Iraq War started. So with that in mind, there wasn't much going on. So people weren't pushing as much to join the military for the warrior ethos. So it was a school thing mostly, and it was initially anyway. And so there was independence there, right? Because at that point I was in a single family household, a single parent household, and I was thinking about money and making sure that I could get to school and not put a burden on my own family. So independence is the big one that I would think I would put forward there.
Did you have the same MOS throughout your whole military career, or were you enlisted in an officer? What was that transition like?
Yeah, so I was a 68. I was a 91 Bravo first, and then I was a medic, and then they transferred to a 68 Whiskey, which is still a medic. So I was a medic for the first 11, 12 years of my career, and that was all enlisted. And then after I got back from Iraq, about a year or two later, I had finished schooling and got my license. And so I was direct commissioned. So then I went to the dark side. So I went from E1 to E6 on the enlisted side, and then from O2 to O4 at this point.
Wow, that's
Still
awesome. Okay. And then my final of these questions that you have are, what was it like for you to transition from the military to civilian life?
Well, it's in the National Guard. It's a little bit different, right? Because we're always in touch with our civilian life, so it's a little bit different for that in that respect. And technically, I haven't really transitioned yet because I'm still in. So I'm still awaiting that time when I'm going to retire and step out completely, and that seems to be coming sooner. So as that thought arises, it does create some little hole in your chest, some heavy, some weight there, as you're thinking about leaving after 26 years, in my 27th year now. So it's been a while.
Wow.
So, first of all, again, I mean, I know we already greeted you, but I do just want to let you know how much it means to have you here. We love talking to people that are pushing to do things for veterans, trying to find new ways to serve when you get out. I think is many of our life goals, and sometimes you don't realize that that's what you need until you sort of fall into it. But so beyond clinical treatment, you advocate for veteran coaching. To help harness service development qualities for civilian life. And I think that's really interesting because I think that you don't see that coaching is necessary when you're still sort of in your head. When you first get out, you're like, I've got the whole world in front of me. I'm motivated, dedicated, and then you get out and there's just, like you mentioned, you're at an age where as you're getting out, you can already feel the hole. You know that there's going to be something missing. I'd love for you to give me a few of these service qualities like adaptability or precision or my own personal fallback, learned perseverance through repeated poor decision making. That coach, that you can use to coach veterans and to intentionally apply to civilian careers. Because there's a reason why people want to hire veterans. We bring something to the table that we don't even necessarily see ourselves because it's inundated into our lives. But I'd love to ask you what type of qualities that you think we should be promoting ourselves with, to be forward focused transitioning.
Yeah, so definitely one of the things that we need to recognize is all the stuff that you've come, talking about the positive event timeline, all that stuff that you've gone through has really given you leadership, perseverance, commitment, like all of these qualities that once you leave the military and hit that wall, like, okay, what do I do now? There's no one telling me what to do. There's no schedule on the wall. There's really nothing that's driving my motivation at this moment other than kind of to survive. So some people, can you still hear me?
Yes.
All right. Sorry about that. So some people end up having, getting stuck, right? They don't know what to do. So I do International Coaching Federation, the ICF coaching style, which is not as directive. There's a lot of coaching out there that is directive. Like, here's the strict thing that you need to do now. Like, make a resume. What we do in ICF is more partner with the person, help them figure out what those positive qualities are that they have, how to figure out what the purpose is that they want to now drive their intention toward, and then to help them create those pathways in order to meet those goals and to get to the position or the job or the degree that they want. So that's what I'm here for in terms of the veteran coaching.
Can I do a quick follow up, Stacy? As a medic, as a corpsman myself, when I got hurt, that desire to help veterans never went away, and I had to find a new way to do that. Do you feel like this is something that has helped you sort of hold on to that side of yourself that when you first came in, what gave you fulfillment? Do you feel like this is part of that still, or does it feel like a brand new thing to you?
No, I've been working with the VA as well, and that's all I've been doing is working with veterans and for veterans. And as I tell, well, as an NCO and as an officer, as I tell my peers, my subordinates, I'm like, listen, we are here to serve the warfighter. And so in my mind, I'm serving the warfighter both in the service and out of the service.
Heck yeah. All right. Thanks.
I was going to talk to you about post-traumatic stress and therapies, but I want to sort of preface my question with a question to you about, which both questions are to you, but one more personal than the other. As a combat veteran, do you have, are you coping with your own mental health struggles?
Yeah, definitely. I have my own stuff going on, and I also reach out and have a therapist of my own. So I do think that getting care, even as a therapist, is important. Helps you take care of yourself so you can take care of others.
Have you found that when dealing with your own issues, I don't want to call them issues because that makes it sound so negative, but when dealing with your own experiences, is it difficult or more difficult to take on other people's burdens when you're providing therapy for them? Or how is that a challenge, or like a personal workplace kind of challenge?
It can be, right? So we always have to self-monitor. We call that countertransference when it's not the veteran making like you looking at you as if you're the bad commander or something, which is transference, right? Countertransference is now me looking at them and treating them differently based on my experiences. So we always have to monitor for countertransference and make sure that I'm not doing that to them. So again, therapy is important for clinicians, and sometimes when you go to school for psychology, social work, et cetera, they make you go to therapy in order to kind of recognize what you're bringing to the session so that you are monitoring your own countertransference and trying to keep that out of the room. So you're focusing directly on what the client needs and where the client needs to go.
That's interesting.
So I shouldn't go to school for this just to win arguments with my wife.
It's helpful.
Okay, good.
So as I said, I've tried a number of different mental health modalities, including eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is EMDR for all you alphas out there. Um, can you kind of break down what EMDR is, or what the process is, or EMDR for dummies? Let's do it that way.
Or for me.
For those who haven't been through it, or are really interested to learn more about who would qualify for it.
Sure. So it's a memory-based therapy. So we'll kind of start there, right? We look at your specific memories that are holding up the issues that you're having today. So if you come with depression, we'll say, okay, what are the situations or the events that bring up your depression today? And then we'll look at those situations and events and try to find other memories that have similar thoughts, feelings, physical sensations, all the way down into your past. And we do the same thing for PTSD. So it's anything that has a memory chain associated with it. The EMDR can help with. Now, what we do with the memories is we desensitize them. There's a bunch of different things that we can try to explain how this works, but the one that I like the most is the working memory theory. So basically, you bring up something scary, right? Some memory that you have that is still bringing up some activation in your body and making your thoughts run. And then I'm going to do something over here, right? Distract you, right? Your brain can't hold on to all that stress and be distracted at the same time. So when the memory gets reconsolidated back into your neurons, back into your brain, it doesn't have as much juice left. But we keep doing that. And as we keep doing that, it brings down the juice until there's no juice left and it's a zero. One of the metaphors that we use is a 2-liter bottle of soda, right? So right now, if you're coming in, you're all tense, you're all a 2-liter bottle of soda that's all tough and hard, right? And shook up, right? All we do is crack it until that steam goes out. The memory is still there. However, how you experience the memory is now different. And that's the goal, is to experience the memory differently, have some adaptive resolution. Usually after we desensitize the memory, the person can connect to positive things that have happened in their life and come to some adaptive resolution, like I'm not a bad person or something like that.
I mean, I've been through other modalities where there's this sort of like distinctive beginning, middle, and end. Does EMDR work off that sort of timeline, or what's that like for most people?
Yeah. So the first thing that you do is you come in and, do a regular intake, but also part of that intake is going to be an EMDR target list, basically. So we're, again, trying to find the memories that we need to go to. That's the first phase of an 8-phase program. The second phase is doing the positive event timeline, right? Or doing something in order to increase your access to the adaptive material that makes the adaptive resolution something that is easier to grasp for your brain because it's front loaded, it's there. We also make sure at that point that you have a way to state shift so that if you're upset, you can relax, right? Or Also, we do tell you how the process is going to go for the next couple of phases. Phases 3 through 6 are all just reprocessing phases, right? They all happen very quickly in a session. And then basically we close the session and reevaluate, which are the 7th and 8th phase of the process. So it's 8 phases, and we just go one memory after the other, starting usually chronologically, but not always, chronologically from the earliest memory in our list to the present memory. And we also do some future templates for relapse prevention.
So you sort by size or last modified. Sorry, there's I just more thinking like when you're going through the trauma is like, I was thinking like when you're going through your Dropbox trying to clean it out, like do you get rid of the biggest stuff first that you don't need, or you go after this is wildly, I could literally just sit down with you and buy you lunch and talk to you for 4 hours about this specifically because it's fascinating to me.
So here I have a metaphor, right? So we have the Jenga tower. And why I use this is because what we can say is like we start out with the early memories, right? Because these memories are the ones that feed up and tell us the rest of our experience, what is wrong with us. I'm bad. This is what I learned when I was a kid. And it's going up, throughout the process. And you can even think about somebody that, was a gunner and is blaming themselves for not saving one of their buddies or their squad or whatever. And then you talk to them and it's like, well, I'm always a bad person, or I never do anything right. Right. And that's because this piece down here is feeding up to that. So if I worked on this piece and said, no, you did your job, right? You got to also think about the enemy. They had a part in this too. And they're like, yeah, you're right. But all of a sudden this other piece comes back up and says, yeah, but you don't do anything right. Right. So this is just another example of that. Yeah. So if we start from the early memories at some point, and I'm going to do this on purpose, but at some point, if we keep clearing out these memories, the whole thing will collapse, right? The whole memory network, because of generalization. So if you learn down here that I'm a good person, then it's going to start to seep into all the other memories and say, like,
and
I don't have to work on
the negativity that you've been sort of tied to certain things and events.
Mm-hmm. How much are you finding that you have to go back into somebody's youth? Because here's the thing. Like, I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but childhood traumas affect us all. Is that the kind of concept?
We usually look for one, right? Doesn't mean we're going to start there, depending on how much time we have with the client. Sometimes we don't have all the time in the world. So for the VA, for example, sometimes we have 10 sessions or 12 sessions. So we might start with the memory that we know based on our conversation with the veteran, that is the one that before it, they were okay. Yeah, sure, there was bad stuff. But after it is when they were really symptomatic. So we might start with that memory instead of going chronologically to see if we can reduce the temperature. And then if we have time, then we can start going back and working our way up.
I see.
You're like speaking my language here. You're very clinical about something that I'm very passionate about. And, I want your insight and maybe some ways we can encourage those that have isolated themselves to realize that they need help and then to maybe seek it. But I think realizing they need help is step one.
Yeah, and I get minimization all the time. I get the other side of my experience was worse than yours, right? So I get people coming to me and be like, I shouldn't even be here. You have other people that you need to see, right? So what you went through, whatever it might be, how bad it might have been, if it hurt you, that's all that matters, right? It doesn't matter how it affected somebody else or what happens to other people. I'm here with you. I need to work with you to get to you where you need to be the best person that you can be. And we have therapy, right, to deal with some of the trauma stuff. And what we're also talking about here is the chronic pain aspect of things, where we have acute pain, right, which is the flesh wounds. And you have the chronic pain that is also affected by those negative thoughts. Like, I won't be able to do this anymore. People won't love me anymore. I'm physically different. I can't participate in mountain climbing with my friends anymore. Whatever it might be. So there's that stuff that we think about that also makes the actual pain feel worse, or the experience of pain worse.
Yeah.
So all of these things can go into an ecosystem, and that's one of those things that I'm imagining as far as my little business model here.
It's like a mind map.
Exactly. Look at clinical stuff. How do I help them deal with the issues, right? As we call them, the problems, and then how to coach them from coming out, expecting something to be different, as you were saying a moment ago, coming out and not having taken the time they needed to heal. How do I get them from where they are to, again, finding that new purpose when they might not be able to be that police officer anymore because of something physical or mental, right? What can we do, and how do we get there, and what qualities do you bring to that position or your goal?
I want
You're a
to pick
rock
up
star,
off
man.
the question you asked, though, Joe. Like, Doc V, do you have any recommendations for loved ones of a veteran who is struggling, that doesn't or isn't ready to recognize within themselves that they need help? How can they approach them in a thoughtful way to encourage them, arouse them to get support?
Yeah, that's a tough one. The VA does have a coaching into care program, right? So that they have a caregiver program that you can call in and get some ideas and thoughts with, and they'll guide you through it a little bit. But as far as what I would say to them is, be patient and don't be afraid of the tough conversations. It's how you have those tough conversations, but don't be afraid of them. We don't want to attack. We don't want to make somebody feel belittled or minimized. But at the same time, you need to have a sit down and be like, what's happening here? I'm sure it's not what you expected your life to be, and there might be a better way. And how do we get you there?
For me, what my biggest wake up call was knowing the effect it had on the people around me. And so I think that that's something, like you said, be patient, be willing to have those conversations, but not, accusatory, but more just, if you don't have a purpose, you're going to flounder and you're going to flail and you're going to flap your arms and people are going to get hit around you. So yeah, thank you so much.
I think purpose is the biggest thing, right? Is identifying, kind of healing the purpose that you had, right? And then finding a new purpose or strengthening the one that that was reduced over time, whatever it might be. But purpose is a huge thing. And if we can install that, I think we can actually save lives.
Yeah. For those who maybe don't know what the clinical signs are of somebody who may be on the path to a mental breakdown, or, on the edge of suicide, are there any sort of signs or unhealthy coping mechanisms or early signs that people could look out for with the veteran in their life that would maybe key them in?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one is threatening. You say something, don't think it's a joke. Actually confront it. Don't laugh it off if somebody says anything. Giving away stuff, right? And they're trying to close up shop, for their life. People do that. They start to give away things and make sure that their things are in order, so that when they pass, the next person doesn't have to deal with as much. And then we have the isolation. I think I might have said that, but isolation is huge, right? People just stop talking to people, and that is a big one. But the biggest thing that you'll find with most suicides, especially, is intoxication. Alcoholism, lessens inhibitions, and when you talk to somebody, usually it has something to do with that. That they were on or consuming alcohol at the time or something along those lines. So those are some big things that you want to look at. And then, of course, if they've tried to in the past, right, especially in those first 3 months afterwards, we would probably consider them a much higher risk of doing it again. So if they came out of the hospital, a good risk of, keep an eye on them, because it's a better chance that as they start to feel better, they'll get that energy to actually do something.
Yeah.
Alphas, I want you to go ahead and check out paradiseinstitute.com. We're going to have that website in our show notes. That's where you're going to find Dr. V and some of the programs he offers, and some of the, when I opened up with those questions, that these are things that he developed, and it's absolutely a wonderful tool. You'll also learn more about EMDR and programs that are out there that may be able to support you or the veteran in your life that needs support. While there, don't forget to follow Doc V's social media handles. They're right there at the very bottom of the page. I went and trolled him, and I've already followed him. He doesn't know it yet, but he's got a secret stalker. So anyway, we'll have that website and the socials in our show notes. Dr. V, as we wrap up and wind down, is there anything that we haven't discussed that you think the alphas need to hear?
Yeah, and this is a tough one because it's like a hard term. One of the things that I do work with people on is harm reduction, right? And we haven't talked about substance abuse at all, except for the alcohol piece. But in terms of what kills people, what kills veterans, we talked about suicide. Suicide kills how many? Like 17 up to 20, whatever the number is now. But I know it's 17 or higher people a day, right? And that's preventable. If we look at smoking cigarettes, it's about 60 people a day, right? We don't talk about it. We don't. It's not a big thing. But in terms of veterans, we're talking about 60 people. And how I got that was taking the 6% veteran population from the 480,000 people that passed, and knowing full well that veterans and military smoke at a higher rate than the rest of the population. Mm-hmm. And we have one metric that I know, works well. 7,000 veterans a year come down with lung cancer alone, right? Mm-hmm. And 80 plus or minus % of that is due to smoking. Yeah. Nicotine has some great qualities, right? Nicotine isn't the problem. It's the combustible smoking. So the first harm reduction method that we can do is get people off of the cigarettes onto vaping, onto pouches, or, some other nicotine replacement therapy that is not going to literally kill them over time.
Oh, that's interesting. There are smoking cessation classes that you can go to with your BA as well, right?
Yeah, they have tons of stuff on there right now. They're not up to snuff in terms of the vaping piece, but more and more research comes out and says that this is one of the best ways to transition from smoking, because especially for veterans that have the hit when they breathe in, or using the hand to mouth action, all of these things kind of go into the reason why using a vape is easier than maybe chewing gum or something.
It's like edible crayons would be good for Marines. Something still.
Seriously, I do remember one last thing, Dr. V, is when I was downrange, we had been in a pretty serious firefight, and we lost a few guys. And when we came back to the FOB, I think he was the psychologist, the head doctor, met the units, and he was walking around. He's like encouraging us to smoke. He's like, don't even try to quit right now. It's too stressful. Like, I don't think that's what people really should be hearing. But anyway, now's the time. If you're still smoking, now's the time to try. I know it's really hard. As a former smoker, it's a challenge, but it can be done. And I thank you for bringing that up. Appreciate that.
I totally would have started smoking if somebody didn't say, "Oh, you'll start smoking when you get over there." I'm just petty, so I was like, "Okay, now I won't." Thanks for the heads up. Like.
All right. Well, Dr. V, we really appreciate you and your time and all that you're doing for the veteran community and spreading the word on these good things and EMDR. And thank you for joining us today. And of course, again, thank you for your service.
Thank you. Anytime. If you need me to come back, I'll come back.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fantastic conversation. I do appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, Alpha, stick around for some scuttlebutt after the break.
Hi, my name is Bill Clancy. I'm the National Commander of the Sons of the American Legion. I'm thrilled that the American Legion family has created the USA 250 Challenge. During my year as National Commander of the Sons of the American Legion, I've made a personal goal to complete the challenge. Not one category, not two, all three categories. But today, I want to talk to you about the Physical Activity Challenge. You don't have to run or ride a bike or do anything strenuous. You can if you want to, of course, but the beauty of the USA 250 Challenge is that anything fitness-related counts. You can play pickleball, you can walk the dog, you can do chair yoga. Whatever you choose to do, be sure to join the challenge. Visit legion.org/USA250 to get started.
Welcome back, Alphas. We hope you had a great break. Now it's time for some scuttlebutt. Joe?
Oh my goodness, Stacy, thank you for bringing that up. I love scuttlebutt. For a generation that lived the war in Afghanistan one grid square at a time, the war now feels like a series of dots on a map. A patrol base carved out of a hard pan soil, a culvert on a highway that never felt safe, a ridge where the radio went quiet. We all had our names for different places. We had a spot that we started out calling the Chicken Run that by the time we got to the end of the deployment was the most dangerous run. It used to be where you went when things got a little crazy up top. You would take these back roads, and the chicken run became the chicken run because everybody was scared on it. But Nathan Keller knows the pull of those dots. When he and a group of fellow veterans wanted to record the war they experienced, they knew all their stories would be easiest to see laid out on a map. This is such a cool concept. And I cannot believe that in the age of technology and the ease at which we can do things like this, that this hasn't been done yet. But they launched a project called Project Athena, a visual map connecting the memories of soldiers to the coordinates where they occurred.
War is chaotic, and when you're a soldier on the ground, you rarely see the full picture, said Keller.
And so what they did is they took these memories, photos, names, notes, they gathered them all together and they put them on a map, adding the memories of others, and they can fill out a full sort of overall picture of the war, which is the coolest thing. It's almost like everybody jumped on Google Maps and played on Google Maps when it first dropped. Anybody who deployed went through the streets of Fallujah on Google Maps as soon as you could. It was just such a cool thing. And this right here personalizes that towards veterans. So Keller is a Canadian and served as an armored reconnaissance soldier with the Royal Canadian Dragoons. And they then as a geotech with 2 combat engineer regiments, the military's map makers. He deployed to Afghanistan in 2009 in the Panjwai. Do you know how to say that better than I do? You were laughing at me, so I'm guessing I butchered it.
You're fine. Go for it.
Panjwai? Come on. Bail me out here. Panjwai district. And he left with memories that were specific and unfinished. When he remembers the war, there's one day and one grid coordinate that stands out for him.
I spent 15 years wondering what the hell happened that day, Keller said. As his unit patrolled near the town of Kalgor, outside of the town of Salavat, they were hit by a coordinated IED attack. One vehicle after another exploded as the mission turned to the fog of detonations and confusion.
So before Project Athena launched, he added photos and details of the engagement to the map. 3 days after the project went live, a second entry appeared. An engineer uploaded a photo and a short account one Keller had never seen before. The missing piece snapped into place.
That day was one of those moments that stayed with me for years because I never fully understood what happened. Gosh, Keller, I've been there. Seeing it on the map with someone else's account from the same operation finally connected the dots. It turned a fragmented memory into something I could understand, and there is real value in that. Joe, there's an interesting concept. After President Lincoln was shot, they interviewed pretty much everybody that was in the theater.
And I didn't know you were that old.
I know, I was there, and it's still.
I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
So they all had different accounts and different perspectives, but they called, it's called the fog of war, that everybody records things in their mind differently. So this does not surprise me. Carry on.
I think that's really interesting. And I'll give you a very short example of my own. For me, Fallujah was very small in my mind. The streets that we walked down, I knew those streets, even the ones that I walked down once, I could tell you the color of the buildings. I could tell you how high they were because while the Marines were looking everywhere, I focused on the rooftops. For some reason, that was where my mind kept going. And having read accounts of some of the scout snipers and people that were doing Overwatch, in a weird sort of way, it made my war feel very small. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that sometimes you build things up in your head and it's okay to let it be something that's just a part of your life, because when you build it up into something even bigger than a big thing that it already is, it tends to overshadow other things. And I don't think that that's good for your mental health. Mm-hmm. But from the start, Athena leaned on open data and community input. Tactical infrastructure like COPs and control bases began with a U.S. Marine-made data set. It was done in crayon, and they were able to transfer it into something digital.
Well,
everything else.
I could just see a bunch of Marines sticking around with their crayons, like, "Here's my color."
Stop using all the red, Wilson. Everything else grows from veterans uploading photos, including fuzzy dates if exact ones are gone, dropping pins where an OP once stood, and writing the short, plain captions that make sense to the people who are there. Curation is the hard part with any crowdsourced history. The project has a moderation queue that reviews all submissions in a process that allows users to report entries they believe are false or have bad coordinates, but Keller trusts the veteran network to keep it honest.
It is a small world, and people will call out what does not pass the smell test. The goal is not to referee every sentence. It is to keep the map useful and fair and let honest memories stack into something bigger than one's tour version of events. The reactions have been the proof. Veterans like having a place to park their story that is not a social feed that disappears by the morning. Families in the fallen have asked for more details than they were ever given at the time, not out of morbid curiosity, but to finally understand what happened and where. Keller approached those conversations carefully and found that clarity helps. They want to know the place. It gives them a measure of closure, he said.
So though Athena began as a project among Canadian vets, close to a quarter of visitors now come from the United States. Submissions by American veterans are still just a fraction of the system, but Keller hopes that will change and American troops will begin to catalog their own photos and memories. There is loads. There's so much. And if they do that, there's going to be a better timeline of this war done from people that didn't write history books. It's going to be ground troops, people that were really there. And I don't believe outside of finding something like the diaries from World War II that you're ever going to get something quite like this. Because I hope that war has changed in a way that in the next decade or so that these types of battles, no longer happen.
See if our allies from, say, Poland or the UK or wherever also start weighing in on this. Would be interesting. Their perspectives are always very interesting. Australia. The war was shared by so many nations, like I just said. But this should reflect that, he said.
There is a quiet urgency to the work. Afghanistan veterans are still young on paper, but the details fade fast. Hard drives fail, phones get upgraded, coordinates blur.
Whatever our politics, citizens elect leaders who make decisions that affect those who serve, Keller said. If you want to understand what that means, go look. There are IEDs and gunfights and months of living behind sandbag walls. Even if you were not physically wounded, very few people came back without some kind of mental injury, Keller said. He laughed at how invincible 23 felt. Jeez, don't I know it? And how 40 looks back at with the better eyes. And of course, hindsight is always 20/20, you guys.
Yeah. This may not be the place for this, but just very recently I realized that I used to be able to look back at everything that I went through at the age that I was and still feel like I was that person. And when I felt like I was that person, I could sit in this sort of defensive confidence of knowing that I did the best I could and it just was what it was. I'm at a point now where I'm past that, where I can look back and see the kid that was over there. And pity is the wrong word, but I hurt for him. He was a kid. We were all kids. I go through the pictures sometimes and these men that I served with that didn't make it have grown in my mind. I see them for some reason as 40-year-old men, 45-year-old men with families and things like that. And it's such a sobering kick in the gut when I go through those pictures and I realize we were children. And I don't mean children. I don't mean to undermine who we were. I'm just saying to see that we were so young to have gone through everything.
I mean, the friends I lost that were killed are the same age as my stepson is now. So that's, that puts a lot of things in perspective. It's crazy.
I think that he's got a good point in saying, though, that maybe the best argument for Project Athena is the smallest one. Most of us, like myself, I'm not writing my story down. There's music, but anything that I write is an escape. I write science fiction and fantasy. I don't want to write my story down like that. I don't enjoy sitting in it long enough that it would take for me to write that stuff down. But we have regular stories that matter to us and the people who love us. A photo of a plywood hooch that leaked when it rained, a broken culvert marker that kept you up at night, the day your convoy turned around because a mine plow hit another device. And then the next vehicle did too, and the whole plan fell apart. On their own, these notes feel minor. together across the country we will never fully understand. They look a lot like truth. You can visit Project Athena to make an account and upload your own stories and photos. We've got a link in the show notes.
Thanks for finding this story, Joe. And you can find the full story on Task and Purpose. We'll have that link also in our show notes. So here's another story we've got for you. In April 1862, the Battle of Shiloh became one of the bloodiest clashes of the American Civil War. There were an estimated 23,746 casualties over a 2-day battle. That is unfathomable. I can't even say that word. I mean, that number's huge. On the Union side, 1,754 men were killed and 8,408 were wounded. The Confederates suffered similar losses, with 1,728 killed and 8,012 wounded. And these are American citizens, regardless of what the split was. I mean, these were Americans fighting Americans. That's crazy. Wow, it just seems so senseless. With the field medicine still primitive, let me just back up and say, listen, the morality of the war was definitely on point. It just seems like a conflict like this, I don't know, loss is loss. But
no, I get what you're saying. It's not that it wasn't an atrocity that needed to be corrected at almost any cost, but the cost was complete. It feels like there had to have been another way. It feels like there was a group of people that were just unwilling to give just a little bit, just enough for something like this to not have happened. Yeah. And I wonder what they would say in retrospect and honesty as to how, if they accept the responsibility for having pushed it this far.
Well, it was just pure greed. No human should own another human, or make money off the backs of anybody else. It's just, yes. Anyway, war sucks. With field medicine still primitive during the early days of the war and germ theory still a relatively new concept, hundreds of wounded men were left to wait for aid in the rain or mud in the battlefield. However, a day turned into night. Shockingly, some of the surviving wounded began to glow in a greenish-blue hue. Moreover, doctors and medical personnel later reported that those that were had glowing wounds had lower infection rates and healed much more quickly than those without them.
So the otherworldly phenomenon was quickly dubbed the angel's glow by soldiers for its seemingly healing properties. It would take 139 years, you remember this, Stacy,
I do.
However, to apparently unravel the mystery surrounding the glow.
Oh, in the back of my mind, I'm like serenading this whole glow with "Just Let Your Soul Glow."
Yeah. That's fantastic.
Name that movie.
Do you want to pull the lyrics up and run through it right quick?
Oh, so silky smooth, let it shine through.
Yes.
Oh, anyway.
Yes, sing it, Queen. In 2001, high school students Bill Martin and Jonathan Curtis at Bowie High School in Bowie, Maryland, worked with Martin's mother, agricultural research service microbiologist Phyllis Martin. I want to see these business cards. Hi, I'm Martin's mother, agricultural research service microbiologist Phyllis Martin. To root out its source. According to the agricultural department, she had previously studied the bacterium. Oh, Lord Almighty. All right, here we go. Photorhabdus luminescens. That's not too bad. Photorhabdus luminescens. Okay. Sorry, that looked way scarier on paper. As a potential biocontrol agent, and knew that this insect pathogen created a glowing effect.
The students found that the oh my gosh, now I have to say it. Photorhabdus. I'm going to have to say that a dozen times. The students found that the Photorhabdus strains produced antibiotics that inhibited the growth of other bacteria that would have caused infections in the wounds, thus aiding in the soldiers' healing. It was known that the glowing bacteria live in the guts of the nematodes, a small parasitic worm. Geez, who had worms?
Everybody had worms. They were in the mud.
Had worms back in the day. Curtis said, and we found that these nematodes are attracted to small insects that would have been in the guts and clothing of the soldiers, and the worms would have excreted glowing bacteria. Gosh, I'm sorry, I'm getting gaggy on that. Excuse me, you guys, you want to pass around those worms that I need them for my glowing guts.
Throw up in my mouth.
The excreted glowing bacteria, the excrement of the glowworms, the excreted glowing bacteria from the parasitic nematode released chemicals that ate away at serious bacteria infections such as gangrene. I know that one. The cold and wet conditions after the battle likely made it a perfect hosting conditions for the worm and bacteria, and likely helped the soldiers live through the night. That's pretty crazy.
That is wild. And I'm curious what we use in lieu. I mean, obviously we don't want to use worm excrement for everything, but I'm curious, there has to be something that they use.
Dude, weren't you a combat medic?
Yeah, I'm saying though, like, but we don't have access to, we don't clean anything out there.
Wouldn't you be in the atmosphere of knowing what the hell they used on the battlefield?
Oh, no. I'm not talking on the, well, they didn't even use it. It used them. These worms were like food. But no, I'm just saying, like in hospitals and things like that, it seems odd that this isn't. I'm wondering, since this isn't utilized in hospitals, I'm wondering what. I was Greenside. They didn't teach me anything like that. They were like, spit on it and rub the dirt and blood out, and then tape it up. Yeah, put some Robitussin on it. We saw carried around bottles of Robe.
Robotrip.
So Melissa Awin, Director of Marketing and Communications at the National Museum of Civil War Medicine in Frederick, Maryland, told Military Times, Angel's Glow was a true phenomenon. And one of those stories about Civil War medicine and soldiers that they hear questions about often, especially around Halloween. What's exciting about the story for us, Wynn said, is the modern interest in determining why. It's genuinely part of the mission to use artifacts, storytelling, and the historic lessons derived from that era to educate the public and define the impact on today's society. We continue to learn from and benefit from Civil War medicine, and this story highlights how curiosity about the unique phenomenon has impacted medical study in the 21st century. Could you imagine the Project Athena from this battle? Glow, people glowed here. Like, what?
Joe, I think I know what your Halloween costume should be next year.
Oh, what's
Can
that?
you please wear a like a battle worn Union soldier uniform with your leg ripped off, and put some of that like glowy chemical on it, and then just say you're angel touched.
Dude, I am here for that. Plus, my wife's name is Angel, but also,
but
that would be such a deep cut.
So much better.
That would be such a deep cut. The 4 people that got it would be like, this is the finest example of a Halloween costume that's ever existed. And everyone else would just be like, what are you, like an alien?
Education and science. Like you're hitting it on so many levels. It's a chance to educate.
I legitimately love high effort for very specific audience. You know what I'm saying? Like, I really I love putting work in. So this is something that we could talk about.
Reenactor nerd that's going to be like, I know exactly what that is.
Yeah, and then they try to correct me.
Yes.
It was actually more of a cyan. Okay, buddy. Just chill.
Alphas, we're going to have that Military Times article in our show notes, so be sure to check it out. Check it out. Also, thanks for listening. Don't forget that we are now hosted on Spotify. You can find both audio and video versions of the podcast. Subscribe to our podcast and rate our podcast. Give us all the stars and the comments and the good cheer. We only want the positives. Okay, we'll take some feedback too. You can, of course, find us on Apple Podcasts, Amazon, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever all the best podcasts are hosted, and that's us. So subscribe to our newsletter and send us mail and guest recommendations at legion.org/Tango Alpha Lima. Hey, y'all. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.